Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay. So we are in New York. It is June the 1st. Well, May the 31st, yeah? Yeah, May the 31st, going over into June the 1st. Yeah. And Srila Prabhupada is having a mild heart attack. Here, okay? Okay. Otherwise, we could use the sound system if it would help. You can hear okay? All right. All right, so yes, Prabhupada's having a mild heart attack. Thank you. A mild heart attack. But nonetheless, well, you know, I don't know if there really is a mild heart attack. If this is mild, because Prabhupada was, it was really not good. During the night, Srila Prabhupada's heart pained him. The next day he remained in critical condition. He could speak but softly and was too exhausted to converse. Skeptical of the doctors, he diagnosed himself a heart attack affecting part of his brain, thus paralyzing the left side of his body. Massage, he said, was the cure. On the morning of June the 1st, other disciples joined Kirtanananda in Prabhupada's room, and by taking shifts, were able to give Prabhupada a constant massage. You hearing okay? They took turns massaging his head, chest, and legs as he directed. This simple act drew each of them into an intimate relationship with him. When Prabhupada heard that not only in New York, but in San Francisco also, the devotees had chanted and prayed all night, he expressed satisfaction, not by his usual hearty smile, but by a very slight nodding and approving sound. Despite his weakness, he was fully conscious. I mean, it's amazing to hear how serious it was. I never realized myself. And I've read the book. I never realized how serious it was. It was really serious. The doctors, or more often their aides, took blood, gave injections, and investigated. Their diagnosis wasn't conclusive. They had plans for experiments. Then suddenly a doctor came in and announced their next move, a spinal tap. Anyway, means they go into the spine, obviously. And I don't know what they do. Prabhupada was too weak to discuss the pros and cons of a spinal tap. He had put himself in the care of his disciples and Krishna. The doctor didn't want to be impeded. He explained why a spinal tap was necessary But he wasn't asking for consultation or permission. Everyone except for Kirtanananda, who insisted on staying, had to leave the room while the doctor performed the spinal tap. Neither Prabhupada, who was too weak, nor his boys, who were uncertain how to act on his behalf, opposed the doctor. The devotees filed out of Prabhupada's room while the doctor readied the largest, most frightening needle they had ever seen. When they were allowed back, one disciple asked cautiously, "Did it hurt, Swamiji?" Srila Prabhupada, his golden-skinned form wrapped in white hospital garments and lying between the white sheets, turned slightly and said, "We are tolerant." Well, I remember, I was in hospital recently, just whenever it was, a couple of months ago or something, in Joburg. And the doctors and the staff were really nice. Gosh, they were just so excellent. It was amazing. So personal, so considerate. But 10, well, actually, what now? It's 11 years ago when I fell twice in Port Elizabeth, and they put me into a hospital there on the medical aid. But it was just the first, it wasn't the right hospital for my medical aid. And it was just the first hospital. We're driving down the road. You were there? No. Oh, yeah. Just driving down the road. There's a hospital. Okay. So we went in. And it was all Afrikaners. And don't mind me if I sound racist, but they were not impressed by Hare Krishna. Oh boy. I think they're like Verkrampter, NGK, Afrikaners. The real thing. He's an Afrikaner, so I got to be careful. But really, they were like the worst type of Afrikaner, They were not nice from beginning to end. They didn't give me the right treatment. They did not. They really did not. And we only found out weeks or a couple or even maybe 3 months, but good couple of months later, what had really happened inside. Oh yeah. That I had herniated a disc, means slipped a disc, really, means the thing popped out into the, what do they call the thing? Sciatic nerve. And I'd hit my head when I fell the second time, and there was a blood clot on the whole hair, on the whole brain. The whole brain. Blood clot. We only found out weeks later, a couple of months later. And this thing on the brain had been there for a couple of months. And this, it's serious. People die. But they just very much on the surface and got rid of me. And Prabhupada had a similar experience. It's just like, who are you? We're going to do what we like because you're just insignificant. Really not nice. Rupanuga. When Swamiji was first admitted to the hospital, it was very hard for me. I didn't know how I should act. I didn't have much experience with this kind of emergency. I was very uncertain as to what service to do for Swamiji. Well, yeah, you can imagine. They're just young, in their early 20s, and even one or two are a little younger, and they don't know how to handle a hospital situation with a serious illness, heart attack. It was a very frightening experience, unquote. Swamiji's life was at stake, yet his disciples didn't know what to do to save him. He lay on the bed as if at their mercy, but the hospital staff considered him their property, an old man with heart trouble, a subject of investigation. And for Swamiji's disciples, this was 100 times worse than dealing with Mr. Price and company. Now it was not just a matter of risking money, but of risking Swamiji. Should they allow the EEG? I think they're talking about an ECG. It's just, they put the things on your chest and back maybe. What was an EEG? Was an operation necessary? An operation? But Swamiji had said that he should never even be brought to a hospital. Give me a massage was all he had said, and chant Hare Krishna. Anyway, let me just drink a little milk. When Srila Prabhupada mentioned his preference for the Ayurvedic medical treatments available in India, some of the devotees suggested they bring a doctor from India. After considering the expense, Prabhupada decided to send a letter first. Unable to sit up or write, he slowly dictated a letter to Sri Krishna Pandit, who had given him quarters for several years in his temple in Delhi. Satsvarup read it back to Prabhupada and then typed it right there in Prabhupada's hospital room. So this is the letter. Wow, it's a real letter. I'm writing this letter from the hospital. All of a sudden, I've developed some headache as well as throbbing of the chest. When I rub my chest, I feel some sensation in my left hand. And when I rub my left hand, I feel sensation in my chest. Whoa, Krishna. My left hand no more works independently. I therefore ask you, if there's any good Vedic physician in Mathura who can send me some medicines, that is, you purchase and send them by airmail to our temple, ISKCON, 26 2nd Avenue, New York, New York. The symptom is predominantly when I get severe pain within my head, and the trembling of the left hand is coming every 10 or 15 minutes. I'm afraid if this is not a disease like Lakya. The boys are taking utmost care of me. There's no scarcity of care. But still, after all, this body is subject to death. I came here with a great mission to execute my spiritual master's order, but my heart is stabbing me. Of course, I'm not afraid of Maya. I know Maya cannot touch me. But still, if I die in this condition, my mission will remain unfulfilled. Please therefore pray to Prabhu, Lord Caitanya, and Vrindavan Bihar to rescue me this time. My mission is still not finished. I wish to live for a few more days. They're prepared to call an experienced Ayurvedic physician who treats such diseases, but I've not allowed the boys. But if necessary, if you can give me an expert physician who can travel here, we can send necessary money for his coming here or arrange for air ticket. You can consult the man in charge of Dhaka Shakti. At last I may inform you that I'm inclined toward Ayurvedic treatment. You can consult the Ayurvedic physician in Vrindavan, who's a Gaudiya Vaishnav. He knows me very well. He sells my books also. 2 things are to be done if it's possible. To send me proper medicines and directions, that will be nice. But if I require to return, that also I can do. Please try to reply as soon as possible in English, because my students cannot read Hindi. So long as I'm in bed, it's not possible to read letters. You can treat this letter very urgently. Consult necessary physicians and let me know what I'm to do. In Mathura, there are undoubtedly many Ayurvedic physicians and many quacks also. Try to avoid the quacks. I would have returned to India immediately, but the doctors say it is risky. If need be, I shall return as soon as I get strength to take the strain of the journey. I repeat my symptoms so that you can take necessary care. All of a sudden, I developed some throbbing between the heart and stomach about 4 days ago. I was so exhausted, it was like fainting. Then I consulted a doctor who came and gave me medicine, but it was of no good effect. Therefore, my students at once transferred me to the hospital, where they're spending more or less 400 rupees daily. There's no question of neglect. All scientific treatment is going on, but I think Ayurvedic medicine will be proper. Therefore, I request you to take immediate steps and reply me. I hope this letter will convince you the actual position. While reading this letter, you may consult some friend who knows English very well, so that he'll read it correctly and reply correctly. There is no scope for corresponding in Bengali or in Hindi. I've got to drink my milk. Excuse me. Okay, that's the end of the letter. By Krishna's grace, on the afternoon of Srila Prabhupada's second day in the hospital, he showed slight improvement. His heart was still causing him pain. His facial expression remained grave, with never a smile, but he was a bit stronger. The interns, nurses, and doctors came and went on schedule, treating him impersonally. One doctor did seem a little interested in what Prabhupada was all about, and at Prabhupada's request, Caitanya played a taped lecture for the doctor. He listened politely, but then said, "It doesn't ring a bell." What? Oh my gosh. The doctor said that he wanted to run a few more tests and that Swamiji might be able to leave after a few weeks if all went well. Srila Prabhupada tried speaking to the doctor, wanting to explain about Krishna. Jadharani had brought 2 of her paintings to the hospital room, one of Radha and Krishna, and the other of the fierce half-lion, half-man incarnation, Lord Nrsimha, tearing apart the demon Hiranyakashipu. Speaking in a very low voice, Prabhupada said that these 2 pictures show how God is many-sided. Here he is in loving exchange. This is Prabhupada speaking. Here he is in his loving exchange. And here also we see that anger comes from Krishna or God. The doctor politely said that he had his own philosophy and that Swamiji shouldn't be preaching while in such weak health. He should rest. Because I assume all the doctors are Jewish, because it's the Beth Israel Hospital. That's just, you can't get more Jewish than that, other than being in Israel itself. Advising the disciples not to allow their guru to speak, the doctor excused himself and continued his rounds. Srila Prabhupada, with a slight improvement, expressed more disapproval of being in the hands of the hospital personnel. They weren't able to do anything, he said. Krishna was in control. If Krishna wants to kill you, then no one can save you. But if Krishna wants to save you, then no one can kill you. Damodar. I was there when a doctor came in to check his reflexes. There was the usual tapping with a little rubber hammer on his knee, that kind of thing. Swamiji was visibly annoyed with this man's coming in and tapping him all over. He was capable of diagnosing and giving the prescription for the cure, and it annoyed him that these men, who obviously didn't know what they were doing, were coming in and interfering with the process of recuperation. Achyutananda. The nurse would always let the door slam, and every time it slammed, Swamiji would wince. He said, "Tell her not to slam the door." She would say, "Okay," and then she would let it slam again. Well, interesting little point. In Bhaktivedanta Manor, I was there when Prabhupada would visit on a number of occasions, well, every time, basically. Prabhupada visited, and Prabhupada's main darshan room was directly under one of the 2 bhakta rooms, in which lived in each room, 10 or several at least, young male, really young, new bhaktas. And when the door the one room on the right, which was more directly over Prabhupada's room, when the door would slam, I was in Prabhupada's darshan room on a few occasions, and I heard it slam. And I knew that Prabhupada doesn't like slamming doors. So we would go and lecture them. You be very careful about the door slamming, And when you walk, don't just sort of stomp over the floor, kind of, very gently step over the floor. And they'll say, yeah, right. And the next thing you'd hear, because I was just down the hallway, 2 rooms away, next thing you'd hear, slam. Shh. Really? And then we'd go up and say, hey, listen, you're not meant to do that. But they just couldn't get it together. Okay. Srila Prabhupada began sitting up in bed and taking prasadam from the temple, supplemented by some of the vegetarian items on the hospital menu. He would say a prayer and offer the hospital food to the picture of his spiritual master. The devotees would sit at his feet, watching him as he then mixed with his right hand the carrots, peas, and mashed potatoes. And he would always distribute some of his food into the hands of his disciples. Jadharani, we brought him many different kinds of fruit. We told him we had brought apples, but he was so tired, he only said, "Oh," and seemed disinterested. We told him we had brought oranges, but again, "Oh." He gave so many tired ohs, he seemed disinterested. Finally, I said, "We brought you watermelons," and immediately his face lit up. "Oh." Rotating in 4-hour shifts, 2 devotees at a time were always with Prabhupada. Although awake, he would remain silent for long intervals, but massaging always continued, except when he was asleep. Gradually, the paralysis on his left side went away. Once while Srila Prabhupada was sitting up in bed, one boy massaging his leg and another softly, almost consolingly, stroking the back of his neck, Prabhupada remarked that if he were not sick, he would have considered the massaging and rubbing too familiar. Damodar, I was massaging Swamiji's temples with one hand. You understand temple? Yeah? Up here, yeah, that's it. My thumb on one temple and other fingers on the other temple. As I was massaging, Swamiji kept saying, harder, harder, and I would squeeze harder. I thought, gee, I don't know if I should squeeze so hard because he's sick. But he kept insisting, harder, harder. Purushottam, I was massaging Swamiji's head, and I started singing the chant, Sri Krishna Caitanya. When I started singing, a very beautiful smile came on his face. Although I did it only briefly, he took pleasure in hearing. He seemed to take it that I was ministering to him just by singing Sri Krishna Caitanya. As Srila Prabhupada gained strength, his disciples were ready with questions. Purushottam asked, Swamiji, in the scriptures, when it describes the lotus feet of Krishna, what does that mean, lotus feet? Prabhupada then sang a verse, Samashrita ye pada palava plavam, Mahatpadam punya yasho marare, Bhavam bodhiya vatsa padam param padam, Padam padam yad vipadam natesham. Yes, that's... Oh, it's Srimad Bhagavatam, is it? Okay. Then he asked the three devotees present to repeat each line after him again and again until they'd learned both the tune and the words. In this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada explained, sitting up in his bed, the time of death is compared to crossing a vast ocean. It is very fearful. One doesn't know where he will go in the next life. And at every step there's danger in the material world. But for one who's taken shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna, that vast, dangerous ocean of birth and death becomes shrunk up to no more than the impression made in mud by a calf's hoof print. There's danger, but the devotee doesn't care for it. Just like if a gentleman is riding by in a carriage and he passes a small puddle, he considers it insignificant. So do you understand now what lotus feet means? It was clear. Then Purushottam asked another question. Why do people say that God has no name? Srila Prabhupada replied by asking why, since God is everything. Why, since God is everything, he should not have a name? In fact, he said, all names are describing Krishna. Prabhupada asked Purushottam what his name had been before initiation. Paul, he said. What does Paul mean? Prabhupada asked. It means little. Yes, Prabhupada said, that is Krishna. He is the smallest of the small. Satsvarup then volunteered his name, Stephen, which means crown. Yes, Prabhupada replied, Krishna is the king. But discussions were rare. Usually the hours were quiet. Prabhupada rested, and the devotees on watch sat in chairs on opposite sides of his bed, reading or chanting softly on their beads. Late one afternoon, as the Manhattan sky turned to twilight, Prabhupada sat up after having been silent for an hour and said, I don't know Krishna, but I know my Guru Maharaj. One day, Brahmananda began giving Prabhupada a minute breakdown of the financial condition of the New York temple. In the midst of the detailed report, Brahmananda suddenly stopped, looked up at Prabhupada and said, do you want me to tell all the details? I thought you would want me to let you know. I mean, you should know. Prabhupada replied that if Brahmananda could take care of everything without his knowing the details, that would be all right. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ganga Mata is not here, but she's normally the questions person. Any questions or comments? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hari Bol.